Welcome to Doctrine and Devotion, a podcast that explores Christian faith and practice from a Reformed Baptist perspective. My name is Joe Thorne. I'm the lead pastor of Redeemer Fellowship in St. Charles, Illinois.
And I'm Jimmy Fowler, elder candidate at Redeemer Fellowship.
Hey.
Oh, Joe's not happy now, guys.
I'm happy.
Joe's not happy.
I'm
First of all,
happy.
Joe's in his happy place.
I am in my happy place. I got a cigar.
Yeah, we're at.
I did. By the way, everybody, I didn't have a cigar yesterday. Just for all the people saying I have to have cigars every day. I didn't have 5. I didn't have 4. I didn't have 2. I didn't have 1. See how I skipped right over 3. I didn't have any cigars yesterday, and I was fine. I was totally fine.
Were you actually fine,
I
or
was
were
totally
you jonesing
fine.
this morning?
No, I wasn't jonesing. I was just thought like, hey, instead of recording at the church, why don't we record at the cigar shop so we can have cigars? That'd be fun.
That's fine. Well, thankfully, not
Hey,
a
look,
lot of people are here.
it's Drew.
Oh, thanks, Drew.
Drew's the manager of the cigar shop.
Thank you, sir.
What up?
He says, "What up?"
He brought Jimmy some coffee. Oh, with a sleeve. That's a new thing. Is that a new sleeve?
That's a new sleeve.
Oh, I like it.
Yep.
Hey, can Jimmy get 2 sleeves?
I'm fine.
Nope. Okay.
I'm fine, Drew. I'm fine.
You like 2 sleeves?
So we're sitting here and we are recording.
Oh, my arm is tired.
Huh?
My arm is tired already.
Your arm is tired. Joe forgot one of the elbows.
Because I do everything.
Yeah,
so
Joe does
I do
everything.
everything, and I packed up all the gear. Well, not all the gear, obviously, because I forgot the arm that holds my mic.
Yep. So he is right now.
Oh, my arm is so
holding
tired.
his mic.
My little baby T-Rex arm just. It's heavy. The mic is heavy.
Yep.
I'm gonna switch.
All right, switch.
All right, that's better. I'm gonna do that every 3 minutes.
Every 3 minutes, you're gonna have to suffer with Joe. I hope your audio stay fine. That's the only thing that matters.
Oh, no, I'll be fine. I know what I'm doing.
All right, you know what you're doing?
I'm professional.
You're professional?
Yeah.
How's your week, man?
Brother, we are not professionals. Even on this podcast,
Even
we
on
are
this
not
podcast,
professionals.
we are not professionals.
The weekend was good.
All right.
What?
What are you planning to do this weekend? 'Cause
This
This drops on a Monday. So this drops Monday. So
Oh,
what
I
are
gotta
you planning-
think. Okay, I gotta
You
think
gotta think ahead.
Oh man, I don't know what's going on this next weekend. Do you? Yeah. I forgot. Yeah. No, I don't have any. I don't have any recollection.
Well, I'll be in Canada.
Oh, that's right. So I'm gonna be smoking your cigars, apparently.
No, what
Oh
do you
yeah,
mean?
I got access to your locker. It's fine.
You're not smoking my
Besides,
cigars.
I bought like half of the ones in there.
No, well, those
not-
are already gone.
Oh,
you already took like 4 of them, 5,
No.
6 of them.
Okay, well that's not half of them.
Half of them is
Would be like 12.
okay. Well, you've had half of a half.
Okay.
That sounds like
Good.
great.
That's like 1%.
It's not 1%.
It's like 1%.
25%. You dummy.
So you're going to go to Canada.
Yep.
Not only are you going, first of all, you were going to go to see the wedding of a friend.
wedding of my brother-in-law.
Yeah, but he's your friend, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. So you were going to see your brother-in-law get married.
Yep.
Glorious time. Also, and you missed your family. Like you're going to go. It's going to be awesome. You're going to see your family, your kids. Oh man, your beautiful kids, your wife, and everything. She's not bad. And then,
Dummy.
so you're going to go, and then at the 11th hour,
Yep.
they said what?
Fofo, could you step in and officiate?
Now, how many? It's not a problem because you've done tons of weddings.
Oh, I mean,
How many, like, so far?
it's. I can't even count.
Literally.
It's a number.
Is 0 a number?
It's a real number.
It's a 0 is a number.
Actually, I have no idea if it is or
Is
not.
that, I don't know.
I don't know if it's a real number. I don't know what real numbers
You got to
are.
go do your first wedding.
I got to go do my first wedding.
Yeah.
Now, she doesn't know it's my first wedding.
No, don't let her know that.
No,
You don't
I'm
want
not-
to freak her out.
No.
You see, first of all, you're going to kill it. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be great. I'm going to coach you through it today.
Yep.
No problem. Here's the trick with weddings. Because weddings, in some ways, are harder than funerals. Because at weddings, people are videoing, they're watching, they're paying really close attention. Stakes are high. At funerals, people are mourning.
Yeah.
And
They're not focused on you.
Yeah, they're not videoing. They're not. They're not going to remember a whole lot of it except for the strong points. So emotionally, it may be harder to do a funeral, but logistically, it's harder to do a wedding, in my opinion. I've done a lot of both. The trick is, you just have to know the outline, right? You got to know the service order. You got to and just stick to a script. Because, when we preach, we don't have a script.
We don't really do. You don't. I'm not supposed to stick to a script. That's gonna be hard. Or I'm sorry. I'm supposed to stick to a script. That's gonna be hard.
Well, the thing is like I'll show you the script that you put together, and so even though I have a script, so basically all of the leading of the vows and all of that stuff.
Gotcha.
You just don't want to play around. When it gets to the sermon time, you just know how much time. We just do what we do. Hey. Let's talk about that.
Let's talk about that.
We'll
Let's
talk
talk
about
about sermon prep.
Sermon prep. So, which is something that we do a lot of.
Yep.
I mean, I've been doing sermon prep weekly for years now.
Years.
I mean, since preaching, I think since modern expository preaching was invented.
So, like, you've been doing this for what?
When did John
35
Piper invent
35,
expository
40?
preaching, Jimmy? That's a callback to an early episode.
All right. What is it, 35, 40 years you've been preaching?
No. I've been preaching since 94.
So 24, 25 years?
Yeah, and then I've been preaching like weekly or whatever since 98.
All right, so still about 20 years. 19
So
years.
the reason we thought we would talk about preaching is because
we get this question a lot.
People
A lot
want
of
to
people
know.
want to know what the process is or how we go about it.
Yeah, and so some of you might be thinking like, well, I don't want to listen to this because I'm not a preacher.
Yep.
Like, what, why might it be helpful for others who aren't preachers to understand how sermons can be put together, and maybe, in our opinion, should be put together?
Well, I think you're in a better position to help evaluate the sermons. And I'm not talking about like trying to be overly critical and trying to beat down on the pastor, but it helps you to help them craft stronger sermons. But then also it's so you could follow along better
Right.
during the preaching.
Plus, this is not very different from how you might be preparing to lead a class or a discussion
Bible
or a
study.
teaching session, Bible session. Now, there's going to be more Q&A. Hey, how's that coffee, Jimmy?
Oh.
Man, I had some great coffee this morning. How's yours? It's not that good, is it?
No.
Why didn't you stop and get some on the way in?
I didn't want to be late.
You were early. You were actually early.
Yeah, I didn't. And I didn't want to be late.
Yeah. Well, you could have gotten coffee and still been on time.
I felt like I would have been late.
You wouldn't have been.
Well, I was thinking I would have been late.
So you can use that. Just going to be more Q&A or just going to be a more dialogical aspect to it if you're
Yeah.
doing a Bible study. But a lot of the same prep is going to go into it. So we've got a way that we do it, and we thought we could talk about that. So this will be, I think it'll be helpful for people who preach, especially, and it'll also kind of, for the curious, let you know how we do it. And so let's just jump into it. Jimmy, in your mind, when you're thinking about, I got to prepare a sermon.
Yes.
What is one of the most important factors that are going into this as you're preparing a sermon?
Prayer.
Right.
Prayer. Just spending time praying. As I'm like I'm at the first beginning process, just asking the Spirit to soften my heart to kind of receive what it is the Lord is teaching. Because I mean, if it's not something that is if it's not something that God is working on my heart on,
Right.
then how am I going to be able to preach it?
Yeah. This is, a biblical idea. It's very much a Puritan idea that we've got to preach to ourselves before we're ready to preach to the people. So we have to have a mindset and a discipline of prayer personally going into it. I
And
mean,
not just for myself, but I mean also praying. I begin praying for those that are going to be there that day.
Absolutely, we want to bathe this thing in prayer from beginning to end, and this is true with all Bible study for that matter. People oftentimes say, and I used to say, it's easier for me to study the Bible than it is for me to pray. I've just always found prayer a more difficult discipline to maintain. I can sit down and study the Bible for 3 hours, man. I can bust out commentaries, write, fill up pages, but I would say that prayer is harder.
Yeah.
But reality, if you're really doing proper study of Scripture, it will be prayer soaked.
That's
you
right.
shouldn't really be able to do one without the other. right?
Absolutely.
So if you're praying, the Bible should be filling that, and if you're studying the Bible, prayer should be attending that.
That's right.
So we got to pray it up. So let's say you already know what passage you're going to preach.
All right.
That's pretty easy. Like, okay, so I know I'm going through the Gospel of Luke. I know what the next passage is.
Yep.
But let's say you don't know what you're going to, like, let's say, hey, Jimmy, I call you and I say, hey, I need you to preach this weekend. Today is Tuesday.
Yep.
What way to go, Jimmy? Please silence your phone.
I silenced my phone, Joe.
Okay.
I silenced
So
it.
if I call you and I say, hey, I need you to preach, what do you do? Like, how do you know what you're going to preach on?
Well, I have a fallback sermon that I always have on.
In your back pocket?
In my back pocket.
Yeah. Would you do downloads from the internet or something?
No.
No.
I picked the most obscure passage That
Oh,
way,
no, I know what you're gonna say.
No one else, because I know
Stop
no
it.
one else is going to do it.
Stop it.
What? I'm going to
Don't
Judah
do
and
Jen-
Tamar.
No, okay, all right.
The divine favor of foreskin.
Okay, all right. For real, what do you do? So dumb.
You know what?
So dumb. Is that going to be your wedding sermon?
The wedding sermon. Actually, I got a call from, it was Seth. He was over there. And
Seth is one of our church
Seth
planters?
is one of our church planters in Evanston. And so like, hey man, need you to preach. I'm like, yeah, don't worry. I got this. I'm talking with one of his leaders. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do Judah and Tamar, divine favor of foreskin. Dude got quiet. Got quiet real fast. He's like, huh.
Was this Chris?
No, it wasn't Chris.
Okay.
And so, I had to explain to him, no, that was a joke. He's like, well, I was just going to roll with it. If that's what you're going to do. That's what
Chris
you're
would have
gonna
been
do.
like, no, you're not doing that.
No, you're not doing that.
That was Greg.
So, no, I mean, so what I would do, I think, is, we prayed. We're looking for the text. I guess I would look for something. I would look for something not general, but a specific truth that would work in any context.
So you're looking for the generic sermon.
I
Is
don't
what
know
you're
how to
saying.
say that. Yeah, it depends on if you know the people and if you don't. Right?
Well, I think that's good. I think that's good because if you're going into a church that's not your own, you want to know, like, okay, so where are they at?
Yes.
You want to know, like, what has the preacher been preaching through?
That's right. And I'll ask wherever I'm going, I'll
Yep.
ask, okay, what have you been going through? Tell me about your people.
Right.
That
So it's
kind of
really
stuff.
not that generic because I've seen you do this. You ask and
Yeah.
you say, like, what's going on there? Is it a young congregation? Is it
Yeah.
an old congregation?
But I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm not going to hit if the pastor's like, hey man, they're really, I don't know, if there was like some issue in the church, I'm not going to speak against that. I'm not going to speak on that subject.
Unless he wants you to, maybe. I've had that asked. I say,
Now-
hey, will you please speak to this issue? Because if I do it, they're going to...
That's different. I guess if they ask,
Yeah.
yes. But if I know about the issue, I'm not going to speak to it.
Now, sometimes you don't know, you don't have the information going in.
No.
So what I encourage people to do is if you are, you should be able to preach, and you sort of hinted at this earlier, you should be able to preach what God is already teaching you.
Yep.
So hopefully you're already regularly in the Word, you're reading,
Yep.
you're meditating, you're studying, you're journaling, you're getting all that stuff down. So like
That's what you're going to get. I'm telling you right now, that's what you're going to get.
So if you are asked to preach, you should be able to, and you've got 5 minutes. You should be like, okay, what's the last thing God taught me? And
Boom.
just go there, get going, and get it done. So whether you're going to choose a passage based on what you think the congregation needs, or whether you're just going to go straight and feed them off of what's growing in your life right now, you want to have your passage,
Yeah.
right? Not just an idea. You might start with an idea, but then you need to find the passage, root everything in that passage, pray it up, and get going.
Absolutely.
So once you've got all of that together, when we start our sermon prep, what's the first thing that we're actually doing? Like, what are we sitting down and what do you do?
For me, I study the passage itself. I don't open up a commentary. I don't go look at a dictionary. You okay? Yep. Sorry, Joe needed a lighter.
So you start reading that passage.
I start reading that passage over and over and over and over, and it depends on the size of the passage. Usually, I like smaller passages. I will journal that. I will write the whole thing out.
Yep.
I'm gonna underline. I'm gonna circle things. I'm gonna box certain words. I'm gonna draw connections between them all.
Come on,
Is the lighter
dude.
not working, buddy? It worked for me. There you go. So yeah, I'm going to journal it. I'm going to sit there and I'm going to study that passage. I'm going to say, okay, what are the things that stick out to me right away? What are the main questions being asked, or what's the main question being answered here?
Right. And what are your questions?
What are the themes that are happening in this? Yeah.
Right.
What happened before? What happened after?
Yes. So you want the broader
And I want
context.
to try to put it all together.
So every passage is essentially asking and answering questions, whether they're implied sometimes. It's what Chapel talks about, the fallen condition focus, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So there's a sinful issue or background that is present, and then we want to see how the passage is interacting with that or answering that. But then I have questions, and people are going to have questions. So lots of questions. We write down questions,
Yeah.
and we try to find the answers to that. But we don't go straight to the commentaries because we really want to just spend time familiarizing ourselves.
That's right.
With the passage, and this is even when we begin to preach it to ourselves, right? We talk a lot about that.
Yeah.
So before I think about the congregation and what they need to hear, I am first seeking to understand the passage as best as I can, and I begin to preach it to myself, confront my own unbelief, my sin. Where do I need to repent? What is this passage calling me to do?
Yeah.
And I think we're way too quick to think, church, what does this congregation need to hear? What do they need to do before we've done this to ourselves? If we have not first addressed ourselves, then it's really easy to be a little hypocritical.
Yeah.
And it's also a lot harder to have the passion and the zeal and the earnestness that should accompany preaching if we aren't first preaching it to ourselves. Because when I've felt the conviction, when I've felt the burden, when I've felt the fire of the passage, then I'm ready to share that with other people. So we really want to start there. Now, but so we start with the reading of the scripture, the praying over it. We're answering questions. We're asking questions. We're writing everything down. When do you get to the commentaries? When do you start using those?
I think once I have a basic outline. Of the passage,
right?
The passage.
It's not your sermonic outline.
No. It's
just the passage.
Just
exegetical.
Exactly. Then I'm going to go ahead and look at a commentary.
I do the same thing. And sometimes, though, I get so plagued by a problem in the passage that I can't understand. I can't reconcile. Like, I don't understand, like, what in the world does that mean? I'll write that down and try to get to it later, but sometimes I'm just so, like, I can't make any progress here.
Yeah, without
So I will
that.
go to the commentary. So usually we wait until we have a general understanding of the passage just through reading and prayer.
That way we're not just a running commentary on a Sunday morning, right?
Yeah, that's a major problem.
Yeah, I want this something, for me, it needs to be something that God's teaching me, not something that I'm just parroting.
Right, because one of the real problems with expository preaching, or what at least what is labeled as expository preaching, is that people will stand up and they just turn into a running commentary on the scripture where they simply tell you what they read in a commentary about background, language, context, basic meaning, and what they wind up doing is description without any prescription.
Absolutely.
Preaching has to be prescriptive, and that doesn't mean that it's always telling you to do something. Sometimes it's just telling you to believe something. It's always telling you to believe something. But there is a prescription aspect to it, because in preaching, we are aiming at the heart. We're aiming at the will. We're aiming at the life of a person. We don't just want them to be, and it's an old saying, we don't want them to just be informed by Scripture, but be transformed by the Scripture. So when we start studying and we have our journal, we have our Bible, and we've made some sense of the passage, we start breaking out the commentaries.
Yeah.
Now, back in the day, I would have like 5 commentaries, a concordance, a dictionary. I'd have to have a huge table at the library or multiple tables in my house, a whole lot. But now we can just do it at a small table at the cigar shop because
Logos.
they're not sponsoring.
They're not sponsored. This is not
sponsored.
thing, but yeah, no, they. I love the software. I use it myself. So yeah, I mean, I'll use Logos. I definitely love certain commentaries that you can't get on there. So
yeah, we always have some commentaries Geneva series and whatnot
from founders as well. Some things.
So
no, I'm sorry, from Banner of Truth. I
was going to say, I don't know if founders have commentaries.
I
wasn't going to correct you.
I'm thinking of the Banner of Truth, like the Luke ones, the Gospel ones. I've been using that Luke one.
The Banner of Truth is the Geneva series, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's what I was talking about.
I'm just talking about the Luke one.
I would never correct you in front of other people.
Oh, yeah. But,
ever.
Yeah,
never.
Not in front of them, but online you will.
Yeah, well, and in front of people I will do it.
Yeah, I know. Continue.
All right, so we have this. We have the software. We have all this stuff. Now, how do you think, or how do you feel about listening to other sermons on the passage, or reading other sermons on the passage during your sermon prep? Because I know a lot of people do this. They'll say like, "Hey, I'm preaching through Luke," and everybody's like, "Oh, so did you listen to Driscoll's sermons?" And my response was, duh, no, of course not. But also, and that's just because it's Mark. A lot of Mark's preaching was good. I just don't do that. I don't listen to other preachers on passages when I'm preaching them. Do you do that? And if you do or don't, why?
Yeah, I mean, after everything is said and done, I might take a look at somebody's.
So that's something you would do at the end.
At the end,
the very right before you preach.
At the end, and part of it's just like it's kind of for the same thing with the commentary, right? Am I missing something pretty substantial here? Am I going off in a wrong direction here?
Or maybe they'll have a particular line of application that you hadn't considered.
That's it. Yep.
Right.
So I do take a look at the end.
What's the danger of doing that too early?
Because then you're just going to copy that sermon. It's going to be in your head no matter what.
Right.
Despite trying not to do that, you're going to do it.
One of the reasons I hardly ever, and I don't listen to sermons online. I just don't do it. But I do read sermons.
Yep.
I read Puritan sermons. I read, of course, everybody does and should read Spurgeon's sermons. I love that Ligon Duncan sermons. I don't know if all of them are manuscripted and online. You can read them.
Oh, okay.
So I love to read sermons because then I'm not tempted to pick up their mannerisms.
Yeah.
I don't want to Chandler it and start talking like Chandler. The world can only afford one hyper-enunciated Chandler. We don't need more than one. So I think
We love Acts 29. Thanks, Chandler, for your leadership.
Oh, and we love Francis Chandler. He's great. What?
Continue.
What? They're both very good communicators.
Continue.
Very good preachers. All right. So I don't want to pick up those things. That's why I don't listen. And I do the same thing. If I go to a commentary, if I go to a sermon, I do it at the end. And what I'm usually looking for, because I think the commentaries have helped me with the meaning, but it's did I miss a line of application?
Yeah.
And the Puritans are so good at that.
They're really good at that.
All right, so we're doing the work, we're studying the passage. How do you transition from an exegetical outline and study of the passage to a homiletical outline for a sermon? Because they're not exact. Sometimes they're very, very similar, but they're not exactly the same thing.
No. See, I think this is where maybe you and I are different, right? Like you need to start. I need to start with the main idea or with the sermon summary. And I think for you, that comes more towards at the end, right?
Well, it's not that the sermon. So what Jimmy's talking about is what we really push at Redeemer, and we're not unique in this, is that every sermon should have a very clear point, one point. We don't care if you have 3 points, 10 points, 11. I've preached a sermon with 15 points. I've Puritaned it. That's fine. You can have 7, 3, 2 points. It doesn't really matter. But there is one point, one thesis that drives the whole thing, and that's what you want your people to remember. They're not going to remember all 3, 7, or 15 of your points. God's going to impress on them certain aspects of the sermon that they're going to take with them. The Spirit's going to be at work. But everybody should be able to say, oh, this is what we were talking about today. This is what the pastor preached on, is this one idea. Now, I think I have that.
Maybe
not super clarified. So we work hard at having the sermon summary, we call it, for our message. And so you try to clarify that before you try to get that worded perfectly
as best as possible
before you start your homiletical
before
outline.
I start. Yeah, and part of that's just that everything that now goes into that outline should be somehow affirming or building that up or clarifying that. Everything should be going through that at that point.
Right. You're either trying to prove that point or you're trying to lead people to that conclusion.
Yes.
And so we're building up to something very, very specific. Now, in my case, you're right. We're a little bit different. Like, I can't get that worded perfect until close to the end.
Yeah.
Because,
and I'll revise it at the end.
Right.
That
so
happens more often than not.
We're probably pretty similar. I know what my main point is that I want to make, but it's a long, messy sentence. And then by the time I've taught it, not taught it, but in my mind, as I've articulated everything that I want to say, by the end, I'm like, okay, now I know how to say this succinctly, because we like it to be a short sentence or statement. And then
short, clear, memorable.
Right, like me. So you begin to transition by clarifying what is the main thing I want them to understand. What's the takeaway here? What's the point, the doctrine, the principle? And then you begin to you arrange an outline. Now, in your case and in my case, it's based on the outline of the passage.
Correct.
But things are worded a little bit different. I mean, you have to because in each part of the sermon, you're essentially leading people to the next step towards that thesis, right?
That's right. I mean, a lot of times I do go with the flow of the passage itself, just because it seems natural that way. I think there was one time over at Redeemer, there was a passage I Tarantino'd it. I started from the end and worked my way back up.
I just did the same thing at Canvas.
Damn.
Yep. Went to the back.
Did you say Tarantino? You should have. That would have been great.
I think I mentioned Tarantino, but not for the outline. Yeah, I don't remember. I think I
Anyways.
mentioned Tarantino on Sunday. There's a lot of Tarantino going around.
Tarantino is the man.
Yeah.
And
Not that we watch those movies, of course.
No, of course not. No.
So, okay. So let's talk about how we think about application and what I like to call implications, right? Because application, when I was trained, it was always like application is what the person is supposed to do. And that's good, that's important, but I think equally important and sometimes more important is implications of the passage are, what does this mean for me?
Yeah.
So sometimes it's like, well, here are 5 reasons this doctrine that should 5 ways this doctrine will impact your suffering. 5 ways this doctrine will change your mind about your circumstances. So then it's not always something to do. Sometimes it's something to learn or something to know.
Yeah.
How do you? What are some ways in which we begin to figure out specific ways of applying this passage?
I mean, I think that's where we talked about, you alluded to before, the fallen condition focus. That is kind of where I look at it in that stage a bit more, is saying, okay, here's what the passage is calling us to do. Why don't we do it?
Right.
Why is it that we struggle with it?
Right.
What is it that we gravitate towards instead?
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of go with, why is it that we're not, and why is it that we should, and then the benefits of.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. In fact, I remember one of the good things that I heard Driscoll say a long time ago was you should be thinking of all the objections that people are going to have to what this passage says, to what your thesis is. What are the objections? Because sometimes they're not articulated objections. They're just reasons we don't do it.
Yeah.
Sometimes they are like, no, I don't like that because. I don't believe that because. And you want to address those. And that's a part of the application as well. One of the things that Richard Owen Roberts, he's a like 150-year-old man who lives in Wheaton. A godly man, great preacher.
Best friend of yours growing up.
We went to grade school together. He is an authority on the history of revival, so he lectures and he writes. He's all over the place. One of the things that he told me years, and this is like 20 years ago, he said it's important for him to, when he's sermon prepping, he closes his eyes and he imagines the congregation and he knows where people sit. Right? He's like, so if if you're preaching at the same church, you know where people generally sit. Close your eyes and imagine the people. Think about them, and now what's going on in their lives. If you're a good pastor, you're able to say, like, I know what's going on in the congregation at large, and I also know what's going on in specific lives of people. And as you begin to think through the people in the congregation, you can say, okay, I need to address this issue, because not only are there individuals with needs, but then there becomes it becomes evident that there is sometimes a temperament to a whole congregation.
Yeah.
Is this congregation largely sad, largely afflicted, largely comfortable, largely at ease? Are they happy? Are they depressed? Is the church going through some difficulty right now? Are they upset by the garbage that they're seeing in our country right now, with white supremacist nonsense or Antifa nonsense or whatever it is? Are they, the political division, corrupt politicians, whatever? And does this passage relate to that?
Yeah.
And how? So thinking about application and implications should start with you, but you have to transition to the congregation. That's going to help you develop your points of connection with them. So let's talk a little bit about the basic mechanics of it, or maybe the schedule of it. Right?
Okay.
So now in my schedule as a full-time pastor, I don't take Monday off. I take Friday off, and the reason I don't take Monday off because the day off is the day I give to my family, and on Monday I'm tired.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
I don't want to give them my tired day, but I'm jonesing to get back into Scripture. So Monday is a day where I don't schedule many meetings, hardly any, usually none, sometimes one, but I'm in the Scripture. I'm reading. I'm studying. I'm reading books, and all of that is helping me to get oriented and prepared, so I can knock out 6 hours of Bible study prep on a Monday, in addition to the other things I'm doing. And then I'll touch up on it again Tuesday, Wednesday a little bit. Thursday is when I hammer it down and get it almost all locked down so that I know what I'm preaching on. I know the passage. I could preach it if I needed to.
Yeah.
But then Friday's my day off, and then Saturday is the day that I go back to it. I've had a day break from it. I put it all onto one sheet of paper.
Yeah.
And I just like one half sheet of paper. I put all of my notes onto that one sheet. I distill it down into 2 columns, and that's when I have my sermon summary super clarified, and I'm really ready to go. Then that's my basic process. Now you're not a full-time pastor.
Mm-hmm.
You've got more than a full-time career. Plus you're working at the church. When you have to preach, what's your process? What's the outline?
For me, it starts Mondays as well, but it's more. I do it early morning, so I'll wake up early. I'll spend a couple hours in the Word, writing it out, journaling. That's where I start at the beginning, right? Just circling everything. I write out the passage, and I just drawing connections and everything to it. I mean, then usually during the day, I mean, you're always kind of chewing on it, right? Like it doesn't leave you.
You're always if you're doing it right.
Yeah.
That message, that passage is on your heart, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So all throughout the day. So usually for me, the prep is in the morning or at night.
Yeah.
Is essentially what it comes down to. So yeah, I don't have like one day where I could just like
do a lot of it. Yeah.
Do a lot of it.
And a lot of guys don't. A lot of guys that are preaching don't because they don't have the luxury of being full-time at the church where that's a part of what they're paid to do.
Yeah. So for me, I usually by Thursday or Friday, I have it nailed down.
You could preach
well.
it.
I could preach it. But again, like Saturday is kind of where that finishing touches come on, right?
Right.
Like, it's only a few hours, maybe an hour or 2 tops.
So you're not stressing Saturday night.
No. I've done that before.
I can't do
do it. I can't do it.
I hear about these guys that are up late at night. I'm always thinking about it, but I'm done. I'm good to go. So I'm resting.
Yeah. So yeah, usually Saturday morning is when it's done.
Let's say though, now let's talk. How much time do we got?
Oh, we got time.
All right. So we have got, and listen. Oh, let me say this. So Jimmy and I, and like Travell and a few others, follow a method of preaching from notes that is 1 half sheet, double column. It's got our outline in it. That's all we use. We don't take anything else up there with us. Other guys like Pat and others will have much more of a manuscript or a very detailed outline that has multiple pages. And it doesn't. One is not better than the other. It's just what works for you. I've done every kind of sermon notes, and I've just found, and it's been this way for the last 12 years. I preach from a half sheet. That's the best way for me. So you can do it however you want. One way is not. Some of the greatest preachers alive and in history have used full manuscript. So don't follow what we do in that. You find out what works best for you. But I was gonna what was I gonna ask? I was gonna ask. Ooh, I can't remember.
I mean, I think part of it is like, if you're gonna do the full manuscript,
right?
Which some do, like, I think that's actually harder than a half sheet.
Oh, it's more work. Yeah,
it's not just more work, but I think even on Sunday morning, it has to be read well.
Right.
Because I think I fall into the line when I tried manuscripting a few times. I was forced to manuscript once for a church, and I said, I'm never doing that again. Never will I do this again.
Even if you do manuscript it, don't take it up with you. That's my advice. Like if you have,
no, I think some people need that.
Yeah, I don't know. The guys that I know that do manuscript are usually so familiar with it they don't have to read it. They're just kind of up there. But, you better be able to read it well. Yeah. And if you can read it well, that's great. Otherwise, it's just...
Yeah, that way you can maintain eye contact. And that's part of this whole thing is that I think even with the manuscript, and that's probably part of the process I didn't share. One of the last things I do when possible is I will practice a sermon.
Yeah.
I'll practice it out loud.
How many times?
2-3 times.
Yeah.
Because I don't want the first time I preach it to be cold.
Right.
I mean, it's not like at Redeemer where you
have Joe 2 services.
We have 2 services, and Joe has the practice service in the morning.
First service.
And then the real service.
Are you saying I don't practice my sermons?
Joe.
Are you right now saying I don't practice my sermons?
I'm saying yes, you don't.
Wait, you're saying yes, I don't?
Yeah.
Wait,
I'm saying yes. Yes.
Yes, I do. I do practice.
No.
You're saying yes, I do?
No, you do not practice.
You're saying no, I don't practice my sermons.
Do you practice your sermons? Yes or no?
No, I don't practice my sermons. I don't practice my sermons. I go over them and over them and over them in my mind.
And I mean, even that's during the week. You're trying to kind of. There are times when I'm trying to find certain sentences to say, right? Like even though I've got it on one sheet, I'm trying to think of, okay, in this section, how do I best say this succinctly? How do I best? and I'll just keep repeating that phrase over and over and over and over.
My
That
mind
way
is
it's
so sharp.
natural.
I don't have to.
See, I have to do that. I have to do that.
No, and here's what I would say is you need to practice that sermon 3 times. That's what I tell everybody who's preaching. Now, once you've been at it for years, you might not need to do that.
Yeah. See, Joe doesn't need to do that.
No.
anymore.
It's not that I wouldn't benefit from doing it, but I have found that at this point, it doesn't make a difference. Like this past Sunday.
So you plateaued.
I'm done. Yeah, I'm on the decline now. There's no plateau. So like typically the default is at Redeemer they record both sermons. They just automatically upload the second one.
Yeah.
Because if I've made a mistake in the first one or if I've misspoke or whatever, I can fix that. But this past Sunday, and this happens, I don't know, about a quarter of the time, I will immediately text the guy after the second service and go, use the first service. Use that first sermon. What?
Why didn't you like the second service?
Because this past Sunday? It's not because I said we're white people. That had nothing to do with it. In fact, I didn't say white people. I said,
I'm going to say
we might look like a bunch of white people.
So Travell and I are sitting in the back.
Who's Travell?
Travell is one of our young preachers.
He's the one African American in that service. Yes.
Okay. Yes, he is. And so we're sitting in the back, and you're talking about. You mentioned about what happened this past weekend over in Charlottesville, right?
I didn't just mention it. It kind of ran through the whole sermon.
It actually was. Yes, it did. And so Joe goes, we might look like a bunch of white people, and then he moved on.
I didn't move on.
Well, we missed it because
you missed it
because we couldn't stop laughing.
Yeah, because Travell's like, you are a bunch of white people. What are you talking about? And so I made a really good point. He missed it because he was laughing at me, which is fine. That's not why I didn't. I actually, because what I said was clearer in the first service than it was in the second service. So I just said, go with the first service. Okay, I remember what I wanted to bring up. The last thing I wanted to bring up. Thanks for stalling for me. So there's been a lot of examples. I've seen it in our denomination and I've seen it in our network, where pastors are busted for preaching other people's sermons. They preach Mark Driscoll sermons. They preach Tim Keller sermons. They preach John Piper sermons.
Joe Thorne sermons?
No. Because
Jimmy Fofo sermons?
No. But now, first of all, like to me, that's just the craziest idea. I have never been tempted to steal anything from a preacher and pass it off as my own. And it's not because I think I'm a great preacher. I don't think I'm a great preacher. I think I'm a good preacher. And I think I'm a good preacher because enough people have told me you're a good preacher.
Yeah, no, Joe. Yeah, you're great.
But the reason that we hear all the time, Jimmy, why people wound up stealing someone else's sermon and just preaching that is because
they don't have time.
That's right. It was the end of the week. I didn't have time, so I just grabbed this sermon and I preached it. And
don't recycle sermons.
All right, so Jimmy wrote an article on not recycling sermons. He got some heat for that.
Yeah.
All right, so here's the thing.
Stand by it.
Jimmy, if you have 15 minutes,
yep,
you're given 15 minutes. Now,
hold on. What time am I given that 15 minutes? The morning of?
Yeah.
Okay. You are going to get what I read that morning.
Right?
Yeah, you're going to get what I journaled on that
why
morning.
not just grab somebody else's sermon?
Because that sermon was written for a specific people. That sermon was written in a specific context or situation, and while there might be some general truth to it, there needs for me there has to be what God is teaching me and what God is teaching us.
Right.
And so that's why if I have 15 minutes, it's not going to be the best sermon in the world. I'll tell you that now. It's
But you preaching your sermon is always better than you preaching someone else's sermon.
Yes.
Always. And this is for all you preachers out there. If you can't preach when called upon, you should not be a preacher. You should not be a pastor. I don't care how much time you have. You should be able to go and not take someone else's sermon and pass it off as your own.
So yeah, if I get called the morning of, that's what's going to happen.
Pat's been called morning of.
Yeah, he's been called.
And he's like, all right, I got to do it. I've been called morning of, got to do it. And it's like, you just got to roll with it. So don't.
I mean, I prefer if it was the day before.
Well, yeah, listen, I would prefer a week before.
Yeah.
That would be great.
But at least the day before, I can put in a good 3-4 hours.
Yeah, and the likelihood of you having 15 minutes notice is not 5 minutes. Listen, you might be somewhere where you're visiting a church and it's a friendly church. They kind of know you and they're like, listen, our pastor, you know what? He got a flat. He can't make it. Would you be willing to exhort us, preach us? And, yeah, done.
Yeah,
Good. Give me 5 minutes. I'll take the songs during the songs. I'm going to go ahead and outline, what I want to say based on this passage that God's been doing. You can do that. You can totally do that.
Yeah, and I always kind of carry my journal with me anyways.
Yeah,
so,
we always have that. What kind of journal? What kind of journal? Lecterm.
I was just trying to pronounce it the right way.
Leuchtturm. We don't say that.
1917.
Yeah, those are great journals.
Now they got 2 ribbons.
I know. I don't have that yet. I got the old one.
But yeah, I mean, I'll look and see, okay, what is it that God's been teaching me lately? And because even during my personal study time, I start asking those questions I'd be asking
of course.
For a sermon anyway.
Because that's your personal, you're preaching to yourself.
That's my personal thing. So I've already kind of got a outline per se.
Yep.
Already there.
You have points of application.
Yep. So like even, when we do staff devotions, that's what I grab. Boom. I already got something there. I just clean it up a little bit.
In fact, we better get going. We got staff devotion. We got to go. We got staff meeting at the church. We got to finish up these cigars and get going. Recommend a book for preaching.
I think. We'll go with Ryan Hughley, 8 Hours or Less.
Yep, good book. Everybody should read Ryan Hughley's book.
Yep. I'm also trying to think of.
Brian Chappell.
That's it. The Brian Chappell book. What's it called again? Biblical
It's
Preaching?
called Christ-centered preaching.
Christ-centered preaching.
Really helpful.
I think Haddon Robinson's book on preaching is good.
The reality is like you read Haddon, you can read if you can just read one of those and you're good for the mechanics of it. But they're both really helpful. So Haddon Robinson, John
Kessler
Kessler
stresses the big idea.
Yeah, so it's
subject complement.
Yeah, big idea, big question, big answer. That gives you your big idea. Really good stuff. Fallen Condition Focus out of Chapel. John Kessler is a friend. He's a professor at Moody. He's written a great book that you probably haven't read on preaching, and you should read it. Yeah. Get one of either Haddon or Chapel, but then get Kessler's book for sure. Add Kessler's book into that mix. It's called Wisdom, Grace, and Folly, or something like that.
Yeah, that's it. Grace, Wisdom, Folly.
We'll link to that in the show. It's a weird, John. That's a weird title, man. I can never remember that.
And then Hughley's book.
Yeah,
Hughley's
definitely
book,
get Hughley's
new book out of Moody.
Not that you're going to actually only have 8 hours or use 8 hours, but it shows you that you can prepare a sermon in a relatively short amount of time. You don't have to be. It's like I got to do 20 hours of sermon.
Yeah, if you got 20 something hours of sermon prep, how are you spending time with people?
Well,
honestly, how are you with all the other tasks and stuff? How are you spending time with people if you're putting 20 hours?
No, they got the time. But there's like 40 hours in a week, 40 hours in a day. Was that what it is?
40 hours a day.
Is there 40 hours
in a week?
40 hours in a day?
Yeah, well, for a pastor was like 45, 50 hours.
So yeah, I think that we encourage people at Redeemer 10 to 12 hours for your average pastor. That's enough sermon prep time. You should be able to do that. And okay. Also, we'll link to a bunch of others. There's some other good books in there.
So let us know if you have any other resources or how do you do your sermon prep. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Doc and Devo or on Facebook /Doctrine and Devotion. You can head on the website, doctrinedevotion.com. There you can contact us. You can sign up for our email blast. You can hit up the store and grab some merchandise. Fresh pod every Monday and Thursday. Blog posts on Wednesdays. Video content on Fridays. Later.